It's 19th of June 24, and I'm talking about tax reform, or tax, I'm talking about tax, or as I would call it, the, the National Infrastructure and Social Cohesion Fund. That's what I would call it, because the Tories changed the name of unemployment benefit to job seekers allowance, but it didn't change any words for tax because it sounds harsh. Tax, tax, tax. Sounds harsh. So if you called it something like the National Infrastructure and Cohesion Fund, there's better names than that, but I'm just giving you an idea. Then, I think people would be more warmer to it. Although from what I've heard anyway, from what I've heard from Matt Goodwin, who's I've got an interest in the stuff he writes. I don't know what his job is actually. Is that a uni or whatever? He's saying that people, even though reform's a right idea, Reform Party, on immigration, under other policies and tax and that, the public want to pay higher taxes, only a bit, and mainly from the rich. And I'm totally in line with that. Social Democrat Party are like that as well. They want to pause in immigration, I think, and they want to. They're sort of leftish, Lib Dems, except they want to pause immigration as well, that sort of thing. And they're not too big and woke either. I just want to talk about this because my connection failed yesterday. I'm a big fan of Patriotic Millionaires on Twitter, or X as you call it now. Patriotic Millionaires, I suggest everyone should follow them. Anytime there's a talk about court tax on Newsnight or Channel 4 News or BBC, and they have a panel, they should always have one of the panels should be from Patriotic Millionaires. I think one of them is one of the Greggs family who, the big Greggs Bakeries. I don't think he's involved with it anymore. Don't know whether he was a CEO or just on the board. He's one of the Patriotic Millionaires, and so is the lady that founded Osprey Gear, outdoor gear in the UK. So these are good people because they're sort of the genie in the bottle. It's been like and destroying the myth of billionaires. I see there was a tweet today from Patriotic Millionaires. They were tweeting somebody from the PA media. Rishi Sunak, quote, Rishi Sunak has hit back at billionaires abandoning the Tories by saying they can afford Labour's tax rises and refused to rule out working with Nigel Farage after the election. Well, that's the point. They can afford Labour's tax rises, so they're abandoning. The Tories are always telling us they're going to abandon the country, but now because they're abandoning the Tories, he's saying the truth really. Well, they can afford Labour's tax rises. And then Patriotic Millionaires does a quote on this. When only 4p in every tax pound comes from wealth, but 63 pence comes from work and consumption, damn straight the very richest of us can afford to pay more tax, and we want a fairer economy and our crumbling public services to serve it. Yeah, that's right. Because I think to be a tax contributor, net contributor, you need to be earning over something like 38,000 a year, So that most people are in the negative anyway. And do you want really good quality roads, basically? Do you want good quality services as opposed to some sort of cut where you get, I don't know, you get an extra £400 a year or something? I mean, they should lift as many people as possible out of the income tax rate at the bottom, but that's about it, really. I see that the Tories are going to let people with 2 kids get child benefit again, or get child benefit again. They're going to raise it from over 44,000 a year or something to over 70,000. I mean, do these people need another benefit? Do they need a benefit at all? Is it a good idea? child benefits maybe for the poor really, and the ones not doing so well, Anyway, and when you look at the lifestyles that people have now, I mean, judge a person whether they've got cable TV or, Matt Rashford or whatever, who's going on about he used to skip meals when he was young, but did his family have Sky TV? That's what I want to know. Anyway, yeah, the only thing that matters is immigration. That's all you should be voting for. And as a protest vote, really should be voting for reform on that. And you've got to pause immigration. Maybe look at reversing it in a way, really. Showing how people, these beautiful warm countries, and we'll do all we can to help these beautiful warm countries. Why aren't Corbynista's daughters and granddaughters going to the University of Lahore or the University of Lagos, to do their studies or whatever? Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, so that's the main thing. So vote reform and that. But there are other stuff I'm not really interested in. Really, I'm a fan of the patriotic millionaires when it comes to that. So let's look at, and they suggested Tax Justice UK's 10 ideas to raise more money, to make it a fairer tax system, or as I would call it, the National Infrastructure and Social Cohesion Fund, or something like that. So here's Tax Justice UK's 10 tax reforms to raise 60 billion for public services and a fairer economy. With the general election called for the 4th of July, political parties are setting out their stall to voters. Whoever wins the election will face a reality check in government. The country is falling apart. The UK desperately needs investment to deliver a fair economy and revive crumbling NHS services, schools and councils. Fair, progressive tax reforms will be essential to address the overriding sense of decay and crisis. Make no mistake, tax will define the next parliament. I don't agree with that. It will be immigration and multiculturalism. An incoming government will face the choice of who to tax, to ask, to contribute more, or deliver a brutal round of austerity to already decimated services. That's why Tax Justice UK and Patriotic Millionaires UK are making the case for fair tax reform, calling for political parties to consider 10 tax policies to reduce inequality and help to support high-quality public services. These 10 reforms, from taxes on wealth to the closure of tax loopholes, are sensible, credible policies with widespread support from economists, think tanks, millionaires and the public. The policies are designed to place the onus of raising revenue on the very wealthiest people and richest companies rather than the average taxpayer. In recent decades, the UK's super rich have benefited from a boom in wealth, while inequality has widened and public services have been decimated. Therefore, it's only fair that those with the broadest shoulders are asked to pay a fairer share to breathe life back into the UK. Polling shows the public and millionaires want the wealthiest to pay more and would be more likely to vote for a party that committed to higher taxes on the wealthiest to invest in public services. Voters believe that both Conservatives and Labour would put up taxes. 3 in 5 millionaires believe that for any kind of economic growth to succeed, taxes are going to have to rise to pay for further national investment. Politicians have an open goal to raise money to revive the country and keep the majority of the public on side, with just over 60 billion available from various tax reform policy options. Okay, here we go. Number 1, apply. I'll go through them quickly. Number 1, apply a 2% wealth tax on assets over 10 million, raising up to 24 billion a year. Number 2, equalise capital gains and income tax rates to raise 16.7 billion a year. Number 3, apply national insurance to investment income, raising up to 10.2 billion a year. Number 4, close inheritance tax loopholes to raise 1.4 billion a year. Number 5, close the loopholes in the new non-dom scheme to raise up to 1 billion. Number 6, introduce a 4% tax on share buybacks, raising approximately 2 billion a year. Number 7, end fossil fuel subsidies for oil and gas companies to raise 2.2 billion a year. Number 8, close the loophole in the oil and gas windfall tax, costing 2 billion a year. Number 9, tax private jets to raise 700 million a year. Number 10, end tax reliefs that benefit huge multinational corporations. Okay, I'll go backwards. So number 10, end tax relief that benefit huge multinational corporations. I love the sound of it. Totally in favour of it emotionally. The UK tax code is the most complex in the world with over 1,180 tax reliefs. Even HMRC, the UK's tax watchdog, recently admitted that it only knows the cost of 365 of the UK's tax reliefs. It is littered with inefficiencies, inequalities and special treatment for favoured interest groups and the wealthiest. For example, video tax games relief cost 197 million in 2022, more than 5 times as much as it was anticipated to cost when it was introduced. Despite being designed as a relief to help independent developers produce culturally British games, evidence shows it is the large multinational firms that benefit from the lion's share. US-owned company Rockstar, who produced Grand Theft Auto, revealed it obtained almost 80 million in VGTR in 21-22, 41% of all VGTR paid out in the UK. This tax relief illustrates the issue with our complex, outdated tax code. It is one amongst hundreds of unfair, costly tax reliefs that need to be phased out by a new government. Yeah, I'm totally in favour of that. Something like Rockstar, you know, Scots are meant to be proud of it. We're meant to think it's Dundee based and that, but I don't think there was much to do with Dundee in it. I mean, it was Dundee based for a while. I don't know if they've still got an office there or whatever, but it's been bought by a US company now, and its main claim to fame is Grand Theft Auto, which is appalling socially, I would say, in terms of social cohesion. It's just that it became popular. I don't think the guys were Scottish or anything, you know. They just hit the jackpot, really, with that. Yeah, and it's just showing you that this was meant for small businesses, but this one's got claiming 41% of that tax, which is really a benefit. And yeah, they'll just get their lawyers to get in there, you know. So, yeah, I'm totally in favour of that. Number 9, tax private jets to raise 700 million a year. Private jets release 10 times more carbon per passenger than commercial flights. Despite this, most private jets pay no VAT, no fuel duty, and most passengers pay the same low rate of air passengers duty as ordinary commercial flyers. There are many ways that private jets could be taxed, including proposals to levy VAT, which could raise 180 million. So I'm totally in favour of that. Tax fuel, which could raise 200 million, yes please. And increase air passenger duty, which could raise 320 million. Yeah, bring it on. The UK has more private flights and more pollution from private jets than any other country in Europe. Therefore, an incoming government should look to tackle UK's outsized contribution to this problem. Yeah, I totally agree with that. You know, Andrew Neil will disagree with it. But yeah, if you can afford that, you're throwing money away every other way anyway. You're probably paying for a quote tax efficiency lawyer, which is probably costing like 30, 40k a year. Apple will make about 70% profit on their iPhones, you know. So, yeah, totally. I totally agree with trying. Nobody should be a billionaire anyway, you know, it's ridiculous. Yeah, totally agree. So, number 8, close the loophole in the oil and gas windfall tax, costing $2 billion a year. Yeah, well, on this one, you know, yeah, I mean, emotionally, it sounds okay to me. I mean, we should be getting away from oil and gas. I believe Dale Vince is my guru on wind power and farm power and that. He's not a fan of, what do you call the things? Pump heaters. Yeah, the things. He's not a fan of them. He wants it all to be done with wind and solar, and I totally agree, really. And other things, like he uses grass to create gas. So grass gas. I just believe I trust him on these issues. I think the sort of pump heaters are a bit of a mistake, really, because really they're just electricity, and you've got to match the price of gas really for them to be sustainable. You know, in Dale's case, he would be using grass gas anyway, or replacing it. I think homes should be heated with batteries now. Batteries, solars and batteries mainly. That's what I think. Because there's these pump heater things, they make a racket for a start. They're ugly. The things that go out your side your house, they're like big fans, extractor fans outdoors. So yeah, I'm liking this already. Even though I'm not against oil and gas in theory, but even the SNP think we shouldn't be using it, and they used to go on about oil and gas all the time, you know, stealing an oil. If they think that, then it must be feasible, you know. Right, let's see. Despite oil companies' record profits since the war in Ukraine, see what's happening here is the suppliers, everything's to do with the price of gas or something that's stupid, or the worldwide price of oil. So even if you're an oil producer, you can't bring your oil prices down for your people because it goes on the market and then the market sets a one price, you know, Brent price or whatever. But for gas, it's even more stupid, you know, because we rely on it so much for our homes. The sort of the creators of the gas and the distributors, they're making a fortune, but the actual suppliers aren't making any money because they can only make about 5% profit or something, you know. So it's a total mess. I know they're doing a review of it at the moment, but it's taking years as usual. Despite oil companies making record profits since the war in Ukraine, the UK taxpayer continues to fund a loophole for the industry that the Institute for Fiscal Studies has characterised as a huge tax subsidy. This is because the windfall tax implemented by the government contains what the IFS calls indefensively generous investment allowances. This loophole enables oil companies to claw back roughly £45 for every £100 spent on new oil, UK oil and gas projects. This costs the taxpayer approximately £2 billion a year. Yeah, well, I don't know enough about it, but I do sort of agree with it in general, emotionally. I mean, I'm not a lefty in that sense, just, you know, all the time, but on the other hand, I think these people on the rich side are multinationals, and rich people are, you know, probably fleecing us. Okay, number 7, end fossil fuel subsidies for oil and gas companies to raise $2.2 billion a year. Oxfam estimates that taxpayers subsidise oil and gas companies in the North Sea for activities such as exploration and decommissioning to the tune of $2.2 billion. The UK taxpayer should not be footing the bill for polluting highly profitable fossil fuel companies nor their cleanups. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that until proven otherwise. The case for the defence has been made. I'm not listening for the case against has been made. I'm not listening to the case for, because it's probably a lot of rubbish. Number 6, introduce a 4% tax on share buybacks, raising approximately $2 billion a year. Yeah, Apple like these share buybacks. Some of Britain's largest companies are transferring profits to their shareholders at record levels. According to IPPR, the UK implemented a share buyback tax at 4%. If the UK implemented a share buyback tax at 4%, the rate proposed by President Joe Biden, you know, he's got some really good tax ideas. I don't know if he's been able to get them through, though. I mean, he wants an international corporation tax of 25%, which seems fine to me. The rate proposed by US President Joe Biden, it would have raised approximately $2.2 billion in 2022. Taxes on shareholder transfers would help to ensure that companies are not channeling profits to their shareholders at a time of national economic crisis and encourage investment in the real economy. Yeah, I mean, sounds good to me until told otherwise by somebody sensible, not just by the Tories or whatever, or Reform. Number 5, close the loopholes in the new non-dom scheme to raise up to $1 billion. And of course, our Prime Minister's wife was a non-dom. even though non-dom was brought about for Brits overseas during the colonial years when we created good infrastructures for those places. Probably it done a lot of good for the thing was there. We didn't settle. The only places we settled were Australia, America, which seemed to be very popular with the global south people and the second world, third world and second world people. It seems to be the most desirable. If professors of colonialism managed to get moved from the global south to America, and then they'll go on about colonisation, whereas it is America and Britain and Europe that's been colonised. We are. Places like Rhodesia and South Africa were doing pretty well. It doesn't seem like they're doing very well anymore. Not that I believe in colonialism or anything. I want Britain out of the Commonwealth. Let's get out of it. Let's cut the ties. But when you're looking at it, this is what it was meant for. It was meant for native Brits overseas. This non-dom thing. It was 250 years ago or something. The tax, but now it's the other way around. Now it's people coming here use it. So yeah, I'm totally in favour of it. Up to 1, as well as non-doms overseas like the Ineos guy and stuff. Yeah, who grew up in the council house. At the spring budget, the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt announced he would close the non-dom loophole at last. The Tories have held on for this for decades and told us it's good. This was a huge campaign win for tax justice advocates, as we had long called for this unfair tax loophole to be closed. The government has since set out the new arrangement for non-doms, and amidst reports of heavy lobbying from the private wealth industry, the scheme has been revealed to be littered with loopholes. 2 exemptions within the current scheme's design could cost in the region of $1 billion in the first year, with concerns raised by academics Andy Summers and Aaron Advani. I'll need to look these 2 guys up. Follow them on Twitter. One loophole enables non-doms to avoid paying UK inheritance tax on their worldwide estates if they are shielded in a trust by April 25, potentially costing $430 million a year. Another loophole provides an arbitrary 50% discount to tax paid on overseas income and capital gains in the first year, potentially costing $600 million. UK residents do not benefit from such exemptions. Therefore, there's no reason such inequities should be included. Yeah, I totally agree with all this non-dom stuff should be gone. Yeah. Number 5. I'm listening to the case for the case for. I'm not listening to the case against. Okay, number 4. Close inheritance tax loopholes to raise $1.4 billion a year. Inheritance tax has a multitude of reliefs, 88 at the last count. That enables wealthy estates to engineer their finance to pay low levels of tax. This is evidenced by the fact that estates worth over $10 million pay an effective average tax rate of just 17%, despite a headline inheritance tax rate of 40%. As a starting point, curbing business and agricultural property reliefs could raise $1.4 billion a year. Evidence shows a small minority of very wealthy estates use these loopholes to avoid paying their full rate of inheritance tax. Yeah, this is a funny one, because inheritance tax, I think it's around about over 390,000. I suppose in London that might affect a lot of people, I don't know, but apparently it only affects about 5% of people. But the Tories and Reform have managed to make it emotionally that the working class and the poor get upset about it. They feel that they're being conned of it, when they're not even paying it anyway. This is the kind of thing. I think as the decades go by, people will realise this is a con or whatever, but yeah, close this loophole. Yeah. Yes, please. 3, apply national insurance to investment income, raising up to $10 billion a year. Currently, national insurance is just paid on income from work, but not a new government. But a new government should expand this tax base to income from investments. Yes, totally agree. such as dividends from shares, rent from property, and interest in savings. Yep. This would equalise and simplify the treatment of different types of income under the taxation system and ensure that income from wealth is taxed at the same rate as earnings from work. Yeah, because I think you want to, at the lower end, you want to do away with as much tax from income, and you're wanting it from wealth instead, and generated money that's not to do, generated passive income, that sort of thing. You want it away from income where people are actually doing work, in my opinion. So, yeah, national insurance is really, it's really just income tax, really. You should maybe just scrap it altogether and just call it income tax, but add it on. I know there's some sort of logic to it, but I don't know, that's just, the actual money doesn't get set aside for that. Maybe it does actually, but I mean, more tax doesn't, but yeah, I totally agree with you. I totally trust you. Number 2, equalise capital gains and income tax rates to raise 16.7 billion a year. Yeah, I'm liking the sign of this. This would simplify the tax system by treating income from wealth and income from work in the same way. Yeah, totally agree with it. I think this is why these sort of BBC newsreaders became, quote, self-employed so that they could pay corporation tax or whatever, 20%, rather than, 40% basic or whatever it is in there, or whatever. Yeah. So I'm totally in favour of that. Anything to do with taxing income and wealth the same way. Yeah, especially income. There is no obvious reason why someone going to work should pay more tax on their wages than someone living on the income they derive from their investments. This has huge cross-party support, including centre-right think tanks and conservative politicians. The Institute for Fiscal Studies recently said it would be a positive measure for growth if it was accompanied by higher allowances. Yeah, I agree with that. 16.7 billion as well. And then number 1, which would raise 24 billion a year, apply a 2% wealth tax on assets over 10 million. Yeah, I agree. I like it. Setting a wealth tax at a high threshold of 10 million in assets ensures that a tiny proportion of the population are impacted. Just 20,000 people, which is 0.04% of the population. This makes it far easier for HMRC to administer and ensures people have a diversity of assets, ensuring their ability to pay without selling property. It would ensure that those who have benefited enormously from structural economic changes over the last decade contribute fairly and create significant revenue to repair the country. Huge momentum is growing, with a former advisor to Tony Blair, millionaires, unions, journalists and newspapers joining calls for a wealth tax. Yeah, I totally agree with it. And I agree with a luxury tax as well. If people can afford a private registration plate, then they can afford maybe another 5% tax, They don't seem to bother about, people are sloppy with their disposable income when they're rich, but when it comes to tax, they resent it and they want to pay pennies. It is a bit sad. A lot of them are council house born, so they want to move the ladder up once they've made it, on some sort of Ponzi scheme thing, like, something to do with a brand name. There's nothing else to it, really. Yeah. Okay, I've said my piece. I'm liking these. If I was the Prime Minister, I would have zero immigration, total pause on that. I would have, for economic advisors, I would have patriotic millionaires and the likes of Tax Justice UK. For green stuff, I would deal with, what's his name again? Dale Vince. I would have him advising me. Of course, these people wouldn't want to be in my thing because of my policy on immigration. But yeah, if you want to save the country, vote Reform, especially if you vote Labour, SNP, Lib Dem, Greens, etc. Yeah. because we're heading for anarchy on our current path. All right, that's all I've got to say about that. I'm going to leave it. My head hurts. Goodbye.